social media networks and the future of communication and business. I invite the moderator of this session, Mrs. Nadine Hani, Senior Business News Presenter on Al Arabiya News Channel, to introduce the session and the speakers.
أول شيء بدي أشكرك دكتور مايا على الدعوة إنه أشارك معكم لأن it's an honor to be here with you today. Thank you very much. The theme of this session is social media and the future of communications and business. In the Arab world, when we think of social media these days, the first thing that comes to mind, of course, is the Arab Spring and the effect it has had on the spread of the use of social media. For example, Facebook users in the Arab world have tripled in just 2 years, rising from 16 million in June 2010 to 45 million by June 2012. Repressed for decades, Arab citizens and expatriates are taking to social media websites with vengeance to discuss freely political and social issues and connect with like-minded people in the safety of the virtual world. But I'm going to tell you a couple of stories today to illustrate the effects that social media has had on the way business is conducted in the region. For those of you who are not familiar with the name of Naguib Sawiris is one of the most high-profile businessmen in the region. He is an Egyptian cult and a telecom mogul. He used to own the Orascom telecom empire, but lately he's devoting more time to politics post-revolution. He set up a political party, Muslimin Al-Ahrar. If you look up Naguib Sawiris on Twitter, you will find that he has around 580,000 followers. Last June, Sawiris received a tweet with a cartoon of Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse wearing conservative Muslim attire. The tweeted images showed Mickey Mouse wearing a traditional Islamic robe with a full beard, and Minnie Mouse was wearing a niqab, which is a full-faced veil with just her eyes showing. He found it funny. He retweeted it. He definitely didn't expect the backlash, but tens of thousands of people joined groups on Facebook and other social media condemning him. Conservative Muslim groups also called for boycotts of Mr. Sawiris' companies, including mobile phone provider Mobinil, which he indirectly owned. As a result, Mobinil incurred several quarters of losses because of the boycott. After the angry reaction from people who said they were offended, he later tweeted, "I apologize for those who don't take this as a joke. I just thought it was a funny picture, but no disrespect meant. I am sorry." But the results for his business were drastic. He later on sold Mobinil. He sold his stake in Mobinil. The points I want to highlight from this story are, number one, if you are the owner of a business, what you say or tweet may actually affect your business performance drastically. Number two, it is the mobility and the ease of use of Twitter that has made it so easy for Sawiris to retweet the cartoons without giving it a lot of thought or consideration for its implications. If it were more difficult to access Twitter on a computer and retweet, maybe he wouldn't have done it. So this takes us to the importance of mobile phones in the widespread use of social media. معلش رح طول عليكم بس شوي لأن في another example I want to illustrate بسرعة and we can discuss that with our panelists. So the second story I want to tell you is about the biggest dairy company in the Arab world, Al-Mara'i. It produces milk, juices and other agricultural products. The cost of raw material that they use in their production was rising, so they decided to raise the prices. They hiked the price of the 2-liter bottle of fresh milk 14%. Consumers in Saudi Arabia were furious. So they launched a campaign on social media to boycott Al-Mara'i's products under the slogan, "Let their milk rot." Internet users uploaded many photos featuring stores in Saudi Arabia overloaded with Al-Mara'i products, which was a sign of the sharp decrease in sales of the company's different products due to the nationwide boycott campaign. The campaign was so fierce that the Ministry of Finance forced the company to reduce prices after 1 week. It was one of the worst PR nightmares for Al-Mara'i. So social media is definitely a game changer in the way companies communicate with their customers. The winners are those who will be able to make use of the social media platforms to have a two-way communication with the customer, such as Starbucks, for example, which it was found to be the most loved brand out of 3,400 food and restaurant brands according to analysis of social media sentiment in 2012. So how can businesses make use of social media? We're going to discuss that with our panelists today. We have with us Mr. David Rottler over there, who is expert and lecturer on virtual communication, social media, and mobilization via Web 2.0. Dr. Nizar Dalloul, beside him, he is Chairman and CEO of Comium. Mr. Ghassan Hasbani here is, of course, you met him this morning, expert in digital economy and former CEO of STC International. And beside me is Mr. Jawad Abbasi. He is the General Manager of Arab Advisors Group. Welcome, gentlemen. And I would like to point out that you will have the chance to address your questions to our panelists. David, I'd like to start with you. I gave 2 examples of how companies can be deeply affected by social media, but we don't just want to focus on the negative. How has it changed the way companies conduct business, this social media trend?
I think it's quite similar to the field of politics and journalism, because the customer is not anymore the customer and a passive customer. The customer has his or her own voice and will participate and be in a kind of dialogue with the company. And so the companies, they have to listen to their customers, and they can take this as an advantage, as many prominent examples show, that customers are shaping future products or services, and I think this can very much help companies. The term for this would be crowdsourcing.
Can you explain that a bit further, David? Because I mean, it's so easy to say yes, customers should take advantage of the followers that they have on Twitter, for example. But how can that actually happen? For example, I follow at Elisa because I like Elisa. So he Elisa, I think beyond the diary. So he basically, it's good for him because he can announce whatever he has, and as a follower, I get to read his news. But how can he make use of that base of followers to actually make it a two-way dialogue and not just a one-way communication?
If he listens carefully, he can give. He has a revenue, but he has to
they
listen.
ask for feedback from them.
Yes, and they have to listen.
You mentioned an important concept, the crowd.
It's called crowdsourcing.
Crowdsourcing. What is it?
Customers shaping products and services, for example. For example, the computer brand Dell asks its customers how the next computer should look like, and they discuss it online. So this helps the customers, but at the same time the companies.
So basically, they start the discussion about a certain concept, and they get feedback from their followers about that concept, and it helps them shape how they should do that. Okay, I'll be going back to you later with a little bit more detail on this topic. Hassan, I'd like to hear from you as well, because when we think of how it has impacted, social media has impacted companies, it can be through various ways. Marketing, PR, advertising, feedback from customers. What else?
Well, basically, these are the 3 main ways that social media can be used in business by companies. The interesting insight into all of this is that not any use of social media is actually useful for companies. Social media, as we've heard in politics, in business, in all avenues, it is good to spread the word. It is good to increase traffic. It is good to generate interest. What it's not very good at today is very quickly ramping up sales or call for action. As Alec said earlier, if you do not tag your social media campaign with a call for action, something that people need to do immediately and engage with it, then it cannot help you achieve a target. So we found that, I've got some statistics basically. Most marketeers who have actually used social media for less than 3 years believe that social media had no impact or no significant impact on increasing their sales. It had an impact on increasing traffic. More than 75% of them say that social media increased traffic on their sites, in their shops, etc. But direct contribution to sales, it started to happen only 3 years later, after heavy use of social media for marketing purposes. And when I say heavy use, that is actually more than 30 hours a week spent by the marketing team of a company working on social media campaigns and creating calls for action. So Social media has gone out to create awareness and in many ways to impact sales after consistent and persistent use over an extended period of time.
It's normal for it to take a few years, like 3 years might be a stretch, but it's normal to build that base and then reap the benefits later.
Absolutely. And that's what I'm saying. However, a regular TV campaign will ramp up sales within a week. That's the difference. Social media campaigns take much more time and have to be much more carefully designed with a call for action. I'm not dismissing the value and the power of social media, but so far, social media has actually been predominantly used to generate interest and generate traffic, and in the longer term, start impacting sales. And at the same time, crowdsourcing is a major use of social media as well. So basically seeking feedback. It's not a one-way channel that you push a message in a campaign, but you also seek feedback from your customers, engage them in the design of the product, engage them in the shaping of the products and pricing. Exactly the same way that it should be used in other places outside business, to actually understand the movement of people and target it, both from information collection to information analysis, all the way to information utilization and execution of campaigns that are targeted by groups and user groups. And that's why it takes a lot of time. It cannot be a kind of blind mass media approach on social media. That's the difference.
You follow Nahar, but they have been very active on Twitter. Do we have anyone from Nahar who can comment later on in the day if that has helped their business or not? So I'm not sure this is an open question. Has it helped them or not? Jawad, you are an expert. You follow, of course, the digital economy very closely. So I'd like to start by asking you to give us a little bit an idea of what are the recent trends that you are witnessing in social media use in the Arab world lately.
I love the city, I love the country, I love the people. I remember 12 years ago when I started my career in Boston as a technology analyst, the common theme was, for many people, especially in emerging markets, their first touch with the internet would be through a mobile device. I used to say that as an analyst, but as a guy who uses laptops and fixed broadband, we always said that, but we didn't really believe it. That was the buzz of the industry. For many people in the emerging markets, their first touch with the internet will be through a mobile device. But fast forward 12 years, in countries like Morocco or Egypt, where mobile broadband and smartphones are multiples of fixed broadband connections, this is really happening. We're doing research continuously on the markets as our advisors, and we're noticing a major trends, if you will. First, the percentage of smartphones of the total handsets available in the markets. In countries like Saudi Arabia and Kuwait, they're already above 50%. In countries like Jordan and UAE and Lebanon, approaching the 40%, hovering around the 40% mark. But in countries like Egypt, it's still less than 10%. But of course, with a much more massive size. So, and then within the users that have smartphones, almost 50%, believe it or not, half of people who have smartphones in the Arab world still use it as a feature phone. So it's predominantly still used as a voice device as well as some SMS. But only half.
But networks are not that great.
And also, we have an issue of I want the latest device even though I don't want to use applications or I want to Twitter use and so on. But still, a substantial 50% of those who use smartphones use applications. A good chunk of them download applications, and of course, expectedly, the largest percent of apps being used on smartphones, mobile, in the Arab world are social media applications. So this is driving, it's become a virtuous cycle. People are getting, the telecom operators are investing in more speed and infrastructure. People are buying smartphones and then they're asking people, what can I use a smartphone for? And therefore, it's driving adoption of social media and applications. And it's also driving a nascent mobile apps industry in the region. We estimate, based on the surveys that we've done, that in the 5 countries of Saudi Arabia, UAE, Jordan, Kuwait, and Egypt, people will spend on buying apps around $80 million this year in 2012. And this is, of course, that's global purchase of apps, but this is also driving a lot of entrepreneurs in the Arab world to also venture into mobile apps and devising applications either on purchasing the app model or actually built-in advertising and so on. So we are definitely where we used to envision 12 years ago, that the predominant use of internet now is mobile, and the predominant use, especially in emerging markets, that many internet users are not exclusively, but primarily using the internet on their mobile devices.